What's up, friends? I'm Allie, and I'm so excited to hang out with you. Today, we're going to talk about something that's both exciting and sometimes stressful, the future. What are some things that come to mind when you think about the future? For me, when I was in middle school, I thought about the future and I was convinced that I was going to be a pop sensation, a pop star. I would spend hours practicing in my room, and I actually prepared a little bit of something for you, so here we go. You get the best of both worlds till it is so, then you rock out the show. That's Hannah Montana. You're welcome. Should have been me, but it wasn't. But that's okay. I didn't have what it takes ultimately. I tried out for the musical, I tried out for my chorus, and ultimately I didn't have the talent. So they didn't even really let me into the talent show, and they let everyone into the talent show, but it's fine. Thinking about the future is fun and exciting, but it can feel like a lot sometimes too. There are things that you may worry about, maybe not things like zombies and alien invasions from outer space or being a pop star, but more like, what classes will I take next year? And will I ever grow taller than my mom? Let's be real, some of you are wondering if the future will need Guardians of the Galaxy, and if so, how can I sign up to be one? Here's the thing about the future, it's unknown. No one has a way of knowing the future. My friend Ashley got to ask some middle schoolers their thoughts on the future, and here's what they said.
What's one thing you wonder about the future?
I wonder what it's gonna look like with all this new technology and stuff, and I just because stuff was so different back in the 80s and 90s, and it's changed so much, so I wonder what's gonna happen next.
I wonder how I'm gonna become a role model for other people to follow and be like, oh, I wanna be like her, but in my own way.
I wonder if we'll ever get world peace.
Something that I hope for my future is just building on this relationship that I have with my family and continuing when I have kids and my kids have kids, and just continuing that lifelong journey of raising amazing humans.
What's one thing you wonder about the future?
Probably just to be nice and kind, and to all, if they need help, just help them at all costs.
I wonder where I'll be in the future, because I think that it's important to map your journey in the future and know what you're gonna do. But sometimes life throws curveballs your way, and sometimes it's hard to deal with those. So you need to stay strong and stand in your morals.
I hope that I grow up and be a very good business person, or just a very successful person.
Awesome. I think you definitely, absolutely will.
Wow, if you could step into a time machine and peek into the future, what would you wonder about? I think it's safe to say that we all want to know more about the future, and while the future can be exciting, it can also cause some stress. For some of us, there might be big things that make it difficult to be excited about the future. There are things you hope will be different than they are right now. Maybe your home life isn't great and you worry that it will never get better. Maybe you don't have a lot of friends and you're afraid that you'll never find people who accept you and understand you. Maybe you learn differently than other people and you wonder if it will ever get easier. Whatever it is, you're nervous about the future because you're worried it won't bring the change that you want to see. For others of you, it's the exact opposite. Maybe your stress about the future has to do with the fact that you don't want things to change. You love the way your life looks right now. You're happy with your family, your friends, your school, your team. When you think about the future, you're stressed that things won't always be the way that they are right now. Here's the thing. Every day we get to enjoy this thing called life and wake up just a tiny bit older. Does anyone else also count down the days until your birthday? 173, in case you were wondering about mine. But the future is coming, and it's going to be filled with things that are really, really good. The future will also have some things that are really difficult. I don't know about you, but to me, that can be stressful sometimes. So, how are we supposed to face the future that we have no control over? How do we stay stress-free right now when we have no idea what the future is going to look like? There's an incredible experience recorded in the Bible that I think can help us out here. A couple guys were in a situation where they had zero control over what was going to happen next. I think we can learn a lot by watching the way they handled the stress that they had about the uncertain future. The two guys I'm talking about are Paul and Silas. They had dedicated their lives to traveling from city to city, sharing the good news about Jesus. Their journey is recorded in the New Testament in a book called Acts. During their ministry, Paul and Silas met a girl who was making money for people by telling fortunes. This was not from God, so Paul and Silas prayed in Jesus' name to set her free. The people who were depending on the girl to make money were so mad that they had Paul and Silas stripped, beaten, and thrown into prison. Now, this wasn't any old prison. This jailer put Paul and Silas in the innermost cell, and their feet were chained. A guard stood watch over them at night so that they could not try and escape. That definitely feels like a lot. In that super stressful situation, what did Paul and Silas do? Let's find out. About midnight, Paul and Silas were praying. Even if you're not sure about this God stuff, I think all of us would be sending up some desperate prayers in that situation. God, would you please get me out of this mess? Sound familiar? Well, I'm sure we've all prayed a few prayers like that in stressful situations. I think Paul and Silas were praying some different kind of prayers. Theirs sounded more like prayers of hope. How do I know? Well, let's finish reading this verse. About midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God. These guys were full on singing while they were in prison, and they weren't even pop stars either. They were chained up, beaten up, and their futures looked anything but up. There was so much unknown. How long would they be there? Would they ever be released? Were they going to get beaten again tomorrow? In the middle of facing a super stressful moment in an uncertain future, they chose joy. They chose prayer and praise. I think there's an important lesson in that for us. You can choose joy over worry. Paul and Silas had little control over their current circumstances and even less control over their future. Instead of choosing stress, fear, and hopelessness, they faithfully followed Jesus and chose joy. They chose to turn to God, who they trusted with their present and their future. If this were the end of the story, it would be good enough. But right in the middle of Paul and Silas's worship set, something crazy happened. Let's take a look. Suddenly, there was a massive earthquake and the prison was shaken to its foundations. All the doors immediately flew open and the chains of every prisoner fell off. Great news for the prisoners. Bad news for the guard, who was now worried about his own future. If all the prisoners escaped, he would certainly be put to death. He was so worried about what might happen to him that he drew his sword and was about to kill himself. Yikes. So let's read what happened next. But Paul shouted to him, "Stop, don't kill yourself, we are all here." The jailer called for lights and ran to the dungeon and fell down trembling before Paul and Silas. Then he brought them out and asked, "Sirs, what must I do to be saved?" Wait, what? The guard who was just watching over Paul and Silas in prison suddenly felt completely different? He was so amazed by the way that Paul and Silas responded to their uncertain futures that the guard put his faith in Jesus right then and there. And that's the other lesson we learn from Paul and Silas. Every day when you choose joy over worry, you never know who else's future you might change. I know this doesn't take the questions about your future away immediately, but I do think it can help us navigate the stress we feel in any unknown circumstance. It can help us remember that every day we can choose joy over worry. How can you choose joy when you're feeling stressed and worried? Well, here's where I would start. First, identify what you're worried about. When I say choose joy, I don't mean put a pretend smile on your face like you're fine and you're not worried. That doesn't help anyone. It's important to identify what it is that you're worried about. Be honest about what's stressing you out. Identify it to yourself, to someone you trust, and to God. Then we have to remember what God can do. Paul and Silas experienced God's faithfulness, goodness, and love many times up to this point. So when their backs were literally against the wall, they weren't left wondering if God was going to provide or if God cared or how God might be faithful to them. Instead, they could remember the ways they'd seen God show up in the past and have hope that God would do the same in the future. And that's what I want you to do too. When you're worried about what's ahead or stressed about the unknown, look back and remember how God had been faithful to you in the past to help you choose joy both today and in the future. Finally, be grateful. One of the best things you can do when you're worried, practice gratitude. Look for the things to be thankful about, even in the middle of your stress and worry. Big or small, the more things you can think of to be thankful for, the more joy you'll see show up as a result. Remember, choosing joy isn't a quick fix. I'm not asking you to pretend that you're okay when you're not. I get that sometimes choosing joy doesn't feel possible. When that happens, it's important to know you may need some help. Talking to an adult you can trust may be a great first step, especially when you're feeling stress or worry, and it might be something more like depression or anxiety that doesn't just go away. Remember, you can choose joy over worry. A great way to start is keeping this conversation going with your group at church. Trust me, you're not the only one worrying about the unknown or stressing about the future. Talking about what feels like a lot with people who love and care about you is a great start for figuring out what joy looks like for you right now.